All right. Welcome back to the podcast for the Iron Shepherds. We're here with Scott Austin of Jade Puma. Scott, how you doing?
Excellent, Chris. Thanks for having me today.
Good. Thanks for joining us from San Diego. I'm just up the coast here, about I don't know, whatever that is, 80 miles or something like that. So we're both probably enjoying the same weather.
Yeah, it's a beautiful November day here in San Diego.
That's awesome. So why don't you tell us a bit about Jade Puma, what you guys do, how you make money?
So Jade Puma is a Shopify only agency, right? So we help small brands grow and build their online business through Shopify primarily.
It's funny, you know more about my stuff than I do.
Well, I've
So
been doing it for 6 years now. So
yeah. So tell me about your normal clients. I mean, Shopify can kind of, I mean, I don't know what are there. There's millions of Shopify customers or something like that. Who's the normal kind of business that comes to you?
yeah, I think these days there's probably 3 million Shopify stores, right? But, of course, with anything, there's a head and tail. So you got the big brands out there like, Kylie Jenner is on Shopify, Gymshark
Right.
is on Shopify, those kind of things. I have found that my niche is the opposite end of the spectrum. Not the people who wish they could do business, they're on Shopify, but they're not doing any sales. But I help new brands start out. And, I'm 58 years old, and I realized over time, what I'm good at and what I'm not good at, or what I have patience for and what I don't have patience for. And I spent like 12 years at Microsoft, and I couldn't stand red tape, right? And I had one client, and one of my early clients in Shopify was a Fortune 500 company, and I would get on with a meeting with them. There'd be 12 of them and one of me, and we'd all be talking, here's the plan, here's what we got to do. And the guy we needed to do the work from the client side was never at the meetings. And I couldn't stand these meetings. And everybody else was like, that was a great meeting. Like, we didn't get anything done. We didn't make any decisions. We didn't move forward. So I ended up over time gravitating towards smaller and smaller brands because I want to work with the decision maker. I get frustrated. It's just me being an impatient old man, right? Kind of thing that I just don't enjoy having, let's go through the first round of approval and the second round and the third round. I love working with the business owner, and we make decisions and we just take action every single day. So in the end, I ended up, servicing everybody in the beginning. Now I'm like, no, if you're a small team, you're a founder, you're the owner, and you want to work and get hands-on with your business, I'm the person for you.
Right. So I think you've been in business about a decade or maybe a little more or less.
Jade Puma has been around since 2018. And before that, I had a previous agency with a business partner called Product Graph. And that's how I got into Shopify kind of accidentally. And we started that in 2013, I think. So yeah, I've been doing
Gotcha. And
Shopify for 12 years now.
yeah. So how is your industry kind of changed with I mean, I know Shopify's changed quite a bit since then, but how have those things kind of evolved?
Well, I think what's happened a lot in that time frame is you used to be able to run a commerce business, a retail business, without an online presence, without an online store. And then if COVID hadn't done it, it would have happened anyways, probably. But you have to, in today's world, have an online presence, right? And you have to be selling multi-channel. Now, there are still, of course, still just brick and mortars. But if you're on Amazon, which is a great channel for people, you don't own your customer relationship. So even if you're a successful Amazon, business, you're going to want to develop your own Shopify presence. Now, I say that like Shopify is like a Band-Aid, it's a term that everybody understands. Like if you have your own online store today, to me, it's an absolute no-brainer on Shopify, right? Which is why I focus only on Shopify. Not because I get paid by them to do that, but because I found it's the best, platform for, an online store to be on where, 15, 20 years ago, there were options. There are still options today, but Shopify just is fantastic at keeping themselves way ahead of the competition in that space. So if you're an online store, what's changed is you have to be an online store. If you start off as an Etsy seller, you start off an Amazon seller, you got to have your own store because that customer relationship has become so important, right? It gets harder and harder today to compete in the world of advertising. It's more expensive. Everybody's drowned out with all the messaging. So you have to develop your own relationship with your customer and get a lot of your business from your existing customer base, repeat business through email. And you're only going to do that if you own the customer through your own store.
Right. So along those lines, because I know a bit about, what you do in that e-commerce space. So when you talk about Shopify, and of course you've got, I don't even know how many, probably millions of different plugins that you can do and integrate, whether it's ShipStation or things along those lines. Do you get into like helping your customer manage the business, or is it really something like, hey, Scott, I want to start doing something to manage SMS marketing and and you say, oh well, I recommend you use X, and I can help you integrate and implement it, but you're going to have somebody to use it or to actually use it, or do you have an agency that actually says we'll do that for you, we'll handle the flows and things along those lines?
Yeah, and it's a great question because every agency has different rules or different
Right.
boundaries of what it does and does not do. And of course, it's sort of like, if you own your own house and you call in the pro to come in to fix your house, they're like, well, I only do the plumbing. I don't do the electrical. I only do the tile. Like, you want somebody to do everything, but no one does everything. Or the ones that do everything are super big, which means they have a lot of overhead and they're super expensive, right? So with the small brands that I'm working with, they can't find one agency to do everything for them because they can't afford that agency. So
Right.
where I have drawn the lines of what I do and don't do is I work on your website and I'll also help you with your email if you're using like a Klaviyo platform. If you're using MailChimp, I will migrate you to Klaviyo in 10 seconds. But that's where I help people at. And over time, that's gotten more and more. Like I used to just do the liquid code and HTML edits and setting up the themes. Now we do custom apps. Now we do graphics. Now we do video and editing and all that kind of stuff. We do email creation, content creation, anything you want on your website or in your email marketing. What the things we don't do is drawing traffic to your site. So we don't do social and we don't do advertising. I find that those take, daily active work, and people need to be experts in those platforms, right? I have decided to be an expert in the Shopify platform to the extent we go over the top on that. We only use one theme for every store that I've built in the past 5 years. Before that, we used one theme for, every store we built in the previous 3 years before that. I pick with the theme I use right now is the Flex theme by Out of the Sandbox. I may change that in the future. But the reason I do one theme, just like I do one platform, is I understand that theme really, really well. And whatever customer, has a request for me, like I want to do X, Y, and Z, right? I have done that before in another store in the same theme. So I can just copy the code from that store, drop it into this store, edit it for their specific needs. But it's a lot easier for me and quicker for me. And anything quicker for me is cheaper for my client, which is super important to me that, focus on one platform, one theme so that we can accelerate the time to market for people.
And so do you find I mean, because I think you have a wide range of verticals, if you will,
Yep.
and I'm just going to come up with an example. Would a fashion sort of company be okay with the same theme as a energy beverage company or something
Yeah.
like that? Is that
It's funny you say that because everybody thinks the theme drives their customer experience, right? So people have perceptions of a website design. When they look at a website, like, oh, I love the design of that website. 9 times out of 10, they do not love what I consider the design of the website. What they love is the imagery of the website.
Mm.
And a lot of people pick their theme based on the, placeholder images they put in there are relevant to my space. Therefore, I think it's built for my vertical. I find that, and for me, what a design is of a website is the decision-making engine that it becomes, right? So how do you break down the choices the customers have to make to understand the product catalog, to be educated in the choices they're making, so they have confidence when they get to the cart that this is the right product for them? That to me is the design of the website, which is navigation, pages, taxonomy, filters, and all that kind of stuff. It's not the imagery. So a lot of people, when they look at the website, like, I love the design of that. It's the imagery they're looking at. I focus a lot of my energy on that, what I call the design, the taxonomy, the decision-making engine, and I can use one theme to service any vertical. Now, we might, if you have a larger catalog, bring in a filtering app like Boost filtering app, which has, more robust features. Your small catalog, we use the Shopify filtering app. So we will change out what we're doing from a app standpoint and also how deep we're going in the code. But one theme can satisfy any vertical because there's a lot of flexibility there. And in Shopify, once we get a theme installed in the store, we have complete control over it. We can open it up and do anything we want inside of it, which is one of the beauties of the Shopify platform.
Yeah, interesting. So I want to pivot a little bit to our kind of introductory emails. For the people out there, I contacted you cold. You were nice enough to get back to me, which is always nice in this day and age. For my years of sales, I've probably gotten a lot more since I started this business. Like, I get a higher response rate with this business than I ever did when I was at Oracle. It's kind of interesting, but anyway, you had mentioned. something of a topic that you wanted to discuss was about kind of, starting get rich quick businesses. And I think you might have actually used the BS word for it in the email. I'd love to get your insight on, why that bubbled up to the top of why you'd want to talk about that. And feel free to share your experience.
Having done, Shopify agency work for well over a decade now, I have literally worked with hundreds and hundreds, if not 1,000 by now, stores, right? And every once in a while, I go through my list in the Shopify partner tool of all the clients I've worked with, and you can see the stores that have closed, right? Stores that I built 5 years ago and they shut down. Yeah. So in my experience, having talked to probably over 1,000 stores by now that have been doing this for well over a decade. And remember, I'm focused on the small guys. So it's the people
Yeah.
that are just getting started, or they're trying to build their business and take it from 100,000 to $1 million a year in revenue. A lot of my stores that I used to work with have failed. And, I find it's really hard to build a business, right? And this is my third business I've built myself. Before that, I worked in the government and Microsoft. I've got decades worth of experience. And in my experience, nothing is easy. Nothing. Whether you want to be, if you want to go to the NCAA, championship as a basketball team, or you want to play pro football, and if you don't even at the top level stuff, just anything in life is hard. Getting on your high school football team can be hard, right? Being a successful high school football team, really hard. Getting a master's degree, everything in this life is hard. It takes work, it takes energy, it takes tons and tons of time. And for me, you're undivided. I can't multitask at all. Like even at the life level, I'm lucky if I can do more than one thing at a time over a year's time. So one of the things I work with stores to understand, and we got to remember, I'm working with small brands. They're not a big company. They don't have peers that they can talk to. So I end up being a counselor for them a lot of the
Hmm.
time. And like, I'll have clients who almost, they're almost in tears sometimes. And they're like, this is so hard. This is so frustrating. I'm like, that is exactly the normal response. They think it's unique. Like they think everybody has an easy time making their
Right.
business so successful, right? Because they look on TikTok and they see someone dancing and they're showing their $1 million freaking sales day or whatever, which by the way is complete and utter BS, right? When people show that garbage, right?
Right. Yeah.
When
Yeah.
you and the real example I'll give there is like, never listen to somebody whose YouTube video has a Ferrari or a Lamborghini in the thumbnail, right? That's one of my best practices. Never look at a video where the person looks like maybe they haven't graduated high school, right? Yet. Like they're too young to graduate high school, right? Never look at the video where it says how to do this in 30 seconds or 3 minutes or less. If they're trying to tell you how easy it is to get it done, they're lying to you, right? Just
Right.
something as simple as, we were talking before about email. Setting up Klaviyo properly for email marketing takes 10s, 20, 40 hours worth of work, right? A full work week just to get it set up, not even effective, just to get it set up
Right.
properly. All the flows and the templates and the designs. And you'll see the video like how I made $1 million in Klaviyo in 3 days or less. Like utter BS, right? So what
Hmm.
frustrates me is, we all understand the term clickbait. We all understand like everybody's living their best fake life on the internet. But the problem is when that's the only message you see all the time, you believe that's true. And then when you start doing it and your email system isn't effective in 3 minutes or less, and it's going to take you a full work week to get it up to be effective, you're like, what am I doing wrong? And so I have to tell my clients all the time, no, you're not doing things wrong. You're doing things exactly right. Like I have a client, he was on my podcast a couple of years ago, JT from ReptoChip. And when I first started working with JT, his monthly revenue was about $5,000 a month. Now, this is 3 years later. His monthly revenue just hit, I remember looking at the numbers yesterday, he had $96,000 for the last month, which is
Nice.
20x, right?
Yeah.
Literally
Yeah.
20 freaking X. But if you look at his growth line, because I have this, scorecard I send him all the time, and it slowly went up. And you could barely see it, but every month it went up. Generally the trend was up, 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 up. And then this past year, it actually started not hockey sticking, but actually the slope increased kind of thing. But it took him 2 years. We did I meet with him every single month, every 2 weeks actually, every month for the past 3 years, and we work on all these things, right? The first thing we did is we added subscriptions, and then we added reviews, and then we added email, and we started doing marketing programs, and then we tried, some SEO strategies, and we did a lot of stuff. And what I love about JT is he's the hardest working client of mine that I have. Any idea I come up with, not everyone, because he won't do videos enough yet, but he'll get there. But every time we talk about stuff, he does his work and he does the hard work. Like we come up with an SEO strategy to make a blog. He sells this substrate for animals. So, the animals are like snakes and turtles and frogs and stuff like that. So he had no content on his site for the Egyptian tortoise, for example. So he made a page for the Egyptian tortoise, but then he made that for 270 animals, right? Getting
Oh, wow.
photography and the guideline, getting the habits. And we've been growing these things for 2 years now. And now it's a massive traffic driver. Still hasn't been converting really well. So we keep working on how do we get it to convert? How do we get it to convert kind of thing. But he does the hard work. And now 3 years later, he's much, higher revenue than he was in the past for a whole bunch of different reasons. But he took a step every single day, got better, smarter, and just kept trudging along. And it's probably his military background. He just doesn't give up kind of thing, right? That to me is the kind of person we all should be thinking about when we start our own business. We should not be thinking about Kylie Jenner, no disrespect to her at all. I think what she did with her cosmetics company,
Yeah.
absolutely fantastic, right? And people are like, she built $1 billion business overnight, and then a year later it's worth $2 billion, and people buy it out and all that other kind of stuff. But you got to remember, she didn't build that overnight, right? That
Right.
started in 1972 with her dad winning the Olympic gold medal, literally,
Right.
right? And then
Yeah.
her sisters and the whole dynasty for decades becoming who and what they are, right? If you were, in a family of the Jenners or whatever, yeah, you could build something like that overnight. But let's face
Right.
it, the other 99.999% of us don't have that advantage. So we have to build it from scratch ourselves. And that is a long, hard, never ending slog. It amazed me how many times I'm talking to a client about something, and this just happened yesterday. Like, we're migrating this store this client built. He built it by hand, his own code in 2001. 24 years later, that store is still up and running, but we're going to bring it into the new millennium by moving it to Shopify. He's got 64,000 products, 14,000 customers, and all sorts of data. And we're trying to migrate all, and it's not perfect, right? The old data's dirty kind of thing. And I'm like, yeah, we're gonna have to go through line by line for everything you've sold in the past year and manage the inventory when we finish our migration process. He's like, wow, that's really hard. I'm like, yeah, it is, but it's the only way we can do it. Sometimes
Yeah.
manual is the only way. And that's, if you want to do it right, sometimes you do it the hard way and you do it manually. And we're going to sit there for 2 weeks straight, checking every single line item kind of thing. Now, if we can do it programmatically, great. But it amazes me how many times, like, there's a hard thing to do, like make 270 blog articles about 270 different types of animals. And my clients like, oh, that sounds great. And they never get to it. But the ones that get to it and the ones that do it are the ones that stay in the game longer and become, successful over time.
Right. Right. It's interesting when you were talking about things being hard, and I wish I could remember who the quote came from, but something that pops into my mind from time to time is getting rich is hard. Being poor is hard. Choose your hard. I
Yeah.
don't know if that resonates with you, but it always makes me chuckle.
Well, the quote I love, and it's funny because I worked for a company that was a startup back then, Active Network, in 2011 or so. And I developed a strategy course that I was deploying out to the company to get people thinking more strategically, supposedly, right? So I found a lot of inspirational quotes. And back then, there was this guy I'd never heard of, Jensen Huang, who was the CEO of this
Sure.
small company called NVIDIA back then, right?
Right.
And I found a quote from him in 2003, a video he did. And I thought it was so inspirational back then. I threw it into this course I was doing in 2011. And it's so prophetic today because for the 10 people that don't know this, NVIDIA is now the largest CapEx company in the world. But in 2003, the CEO said, you don't need a winning strategy for your company. You need a strategy that keeps you in the game for the next year. Because next year, you're going to be smarter about your business. And then the next year, after that, you're going to be smarter. He's like, don't try to find a winning strategy. Try to find a strategy that keeps your company alive. And then over time, you'll get smarter about things. And obviously that worked out quite well for them.
Yeah. So, in the years that you've been in business, kind of keeping with the same theme, getting started, probably being a one-man show, you had all kinds of hard challenges that you did at the start. What's hard about today for you?
Today, the hard for me is because I've done a really good job, at least I think, in building a brand. Like I always ask my clients when they first find me, like, how did you find me? And there's a bunch of different ways they do. And I'm a huge fan of content marketing, right? So
Hmm.
I have a podcast. I've not missed a single episode in 6 years' time. I do YouTube videos. I do blog articles. I don't do anything outbound. It's all inbound, right? I'm just waiting for people to find my content and then contact me, which is, there's a
Wow.
lot of things about that strategy that I absolutely love, right? Especially for me being such a, what's the term for people who hate people?
Introvert.
Yeah, introvert. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you. I'm a huge introvert, right? So, I don't like reaching out to people kind of thing. So I like when they come to me. But the hard part used to be, I say the hardest part in any business, I don't care what your business is, the hardest part is customer acquisition. And everybody thinks, oh, it's the product, it's the technology, it's the science. Like, no, that's hard. I'm not disagreeing. The hardest part in any business is customer acquisition. So for me, the customer acquisition strategy of inbound and content was the hard part. And I have to, like an example of doing the hard work, I do my podcast every 2 weeks. It goes out on Wednesday. There are many times that my podcast is not ready on Sunday night. I don't allow myself to go to bed on Sunday night until my podcast is done. There are many people who might say, I'll get to it later. Like, and then they miss that one. And once you miss one, you miss them, then you've given yourself permission to miss all of them kind of thing. So I'm very proud of the fact, I don't care what, every other Wednesday, I don't care if it's Christmas or Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving's on a Thursday, right? But I don't care what it is. If I'm on vacation, doesn't matter. I always publish every other Wednesday kind of thing. Now I'm a little bit, the way I am kind of thing, and that's not for everybody. But the point is you got to do that hard work. In the early days, the hard work was having content for that customer acquisition and finding customers. Now that that's been successful, I have to keep it going, right? It doesn't mean I can stop. When I say I'm successful content creation, it doesn't mean I stop creating content, but that has gotten so good. I actually have more business than I can handle. So the hard part now is I now have to hire. I used to be very proud of the fact I was a one-man Shopify agency. I used to say, I guarantee I'm the best one-person Shopify agency in the world. Maybe it's an exaggeration, but maybe not. I consider myself pretty good for one
Hmm.
man show. But
Sure.
now
Yeah.
there's 10 of us working at Jade Puma, and the hard part for me now is finding good help and keeping good help, right? That's a super hard part of every business that has more than one employee is finding good employees and keeping good employees. So normally I would say the hardest part is customer acquisition. I'm doing well at that. Now the hardest part is keeping that customer acquisition satisfied because with good service.
Yeah. So interesting. I kind of anticipated you would have said customer acquisition. It's interesting that you do that with no outbound, and good for you. That's awesome. So along those getting good people, if you had a magic wand, well, I guess if you had a magic wand, you would just wave it and you would have good people sitting in chairs. How do you struggle with that, or what do you think could be better that would make that a little easier on you?
I don't think I can. Well, you can always make it better kind of thing. I just think it's the challenge of, once again, it goes back to everybody thinks it's easy, right? Everybody thinks everything is easy. So I'll meet somebody who says, they're good at something, right? And then you find out they're not good at it. And when it comes to solving a problem, they don't know how to solve a problem. Now, I'm 58 years old. I'm a complete old curmudgeon. I'm not of the boomer generation, but people have called me boomer before, and I accept that, right? And so I am one of these people who will say quite often, kids these days, right? And there is a generational divide between, different groups of people. And the way that I do things is not the way that, people who are 30, 40 years younger than me do things. Not saying they're right or wrong. It's just that difference, right? So for me, the challenge is trying to understand how people think differently. And I'm also like, I used to coach kids in roller derby in the past decade. And I always considered myself like a 1970s football coach, the tough love kind of thing and suck it up. And
Yeah.
there's strength to that, but it's not for everybody kind of thing. So I've never been the rah-rah guy. I'm not hugely inspirational. I think the job is the satisfaction. Success is launching the site, not the celebration about launching the site. And not everybody's that way. So for me, the secret is finding people who work well with me. They may be great people, but they're not great people with me because of my style and their style. So, a working relationship, like any relationship, the two people have to work well together, respect each other, understand each other. And if they don't, then you just quickly part ways kind of thing. So I'm a big
Yeah.
fan of trying anybody out who seems like they have promise. And if it works, keep giving more and more responsibility to them. If it doesn't, cut them loose in a second, right? No
Yeah.
hard
Yeah.
feeling. It's just not going to work.
Yeah. Just looked at the clock, and I want to be respectful of your time. I know we went over the time I booked for you. Why don't you tell the audience, how they do go about getting in touch with you? Should they want to procure your services? We can jump out of here.
Yeah, if anybody's looking to become successful on Shopify with e-commerce, I'm here for you. I'm absolutely love helping brands, and I love the relationships I end up developing over years with people, right? So if you want to reach out to Jade Puma, it's jadepuma.com. That's where you get started. You can just contact us through there, and happy to help you out.
Terrific. And Scott, I think, like I said, we're not far from each other, and I got a bunch of friends in San Diego. Maybe we can. Maybe we pop out to one of those Pacific Beach places, grab some lunch one of these days.
Tap Room, baby, 2 blocks from my house. I'll be there today.
Is that your lunch spot?
Yep. It's 2 blocks from my house. I have what I call this 2 block radius. If it's more than 2 blocks from my house, I'm not sure if I'm going to go. So, because where I live, there's a lot of stuff within 2 blocks. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, maybe I should move down to yours. I have a 1.5 mile bubble, so that's pretty good. Well, awesome. I really appreciate you sharing your business insights. It was a pleasure getting to know you, and yeah, hopefully we'll stay in touch.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot for having me.
All right, thanks.